The NTSB preliminary report is out on the Houston Tour helicopter crash that crashed into the 1,000-foot tower near downtown Houston last month. Let's check it out. The NTSB preliminary report corroborates with recently released video data showing that 3 of the red flashing beacons were operational on the 1,000-foot tower, but there were no white flashing strobe obstacle lights operational on the tower at the time of the accident. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and it is Friday, the 1st of November. Let's get into the report. On October 20th, about 1951 Central Daylight Time, well after sunset, a Robinson R-44 helicopter November 881 Kilo Echo was destroyed when it impacted a radio tower near Houston, Texas. The pilot and 3 passengers sustained fatal injuries. The helicopter was operating under FAR Part 91, Revenue Sightseeing Flights. More on that in a minute. According to preliminary ADSB data and recorded air traffic control communications, the helicopter departed Ellington Airport, Houston about 1942 local time and flew north, then northwest at about 900 feet MSL, not 600 feet as was previously reported on this channel based on the preliminary ADSB data. Still below the height of the 1,000-foot towers in the area. The pilot established communications with local air traffic control and requested the downtown loop several minutes later. Remember, this is in Houston's Class Bravo airspace, and the downtown loop is a standard pattern that this tour company started to fly. This tour company just began these tours earlier in the month. Now here comes the distraction. Several minutes later, the controller issued a traffic advisory for a company tour helicopter, November 233 Juliet Delta. That means another helicopter from the same company also giving a tour in the area. The accident pilot acknowledged traffic in sight on her ADSB. So she's looking down at something, either an iPad or ForeFlight or a presentation in the cockpit of her helicopter. The controller then requested the accident pilot to maintain visual separation from the traffic, pick up the traffic visually, and the pilot was reading the instructions back to the controller when the radio transmissions abruptly ended. So the pilot struck the tower while she was trying to visually acquire traffic apparently off to her right, and looking at the ADSB data from previous flights, she turned slightly left right towards the tower and was in the process of responding to ATC when she struck the tower. So looking at flight data from previous tour flights on this downtown loop versus the accident flight shown in purple here, this explains why the pilot swerved slightly and put her right on a direct course for this tower. Surveillance video, several witnesses, and the helicopter structure embedded in the radio tower indicated the helicopter impacted the tower at about 100 feet from the top of the 1,000-foot tower. The tower was equipped with flashing light beacons. These are the red lights that you see at 1,000 feet, 639 feet, and 340 feet from the surface. A surveillance video showed the tower's top and middle beacons flashing as the helicopter approached the tower. See figure 2, we'll look at that here in a second. The tower's lower beacons were not visible in the video, and here's why. Here's a still from the surveillance video. Here's the accident helicopter. Here's the top red light, the middle red light. The lower red light at 340 feet from this angle is obscured in the lights of the city behind it. At this elevation, at her elevation, this middle light is obscured in the lights of the city behind her. Standing here from the ground, we can clearly and easily see the lit tower or the lights on the tower. But up in that helicopter at that elevation, this red flashing light is going to be obscured by the city lights behind it. This upper light above her, she may not even be seeing that light as she's traveling along in her normal cruise attitude of the helicopter, looking for the other helicopter traffic. That light is above her. She may not even see that light. And here's the whole human factors about these towers and these lights and low-level night flying. Unless you've done much low-level flying at night, we did a lot of C-130 formation flying at night coming into the city of Reno, or other low-level type flying. I'll tell you another story here in a second. At night, these lights very easily blend into the city lights behind you. It is very difficult to see these lights at night. Now, she knows this tower is here. She's probably flown this route several times, and this is the catch. This is the problem that gets you when you are a low-level pilot. If you're an ag pilot, wire strikes, these sort of things happen all the time, and it's the obstacle that you know about. You know the obstacle's out there, but you momentarily forget that the obstacle is out there. You momentarily lose situational awareness of where you are at, how close you are in relation to the obstacle ahead of you. Case in point, there I was flying a lead plane, training up to be a U.S. Forest Service low-level lead plane pilot, and we were working in the very congested airspace in Southern California during the day in a very smoke-filled environment, and we're working in a canyon that has a set of wires in it, which is so very common in Southern California. And so one of the things we did is we had a radar altimeter in our lead aircraft, and we would set the altitude of those wires into the radar altimeter. We'd set an altitude just 100 feet above those wires to remind us that those wires are out there. And sure enough, as I go through the day and the smoke comes and goes and changes, at one point the smoke completely obscured those wires, and I start in on the next low-level run to lead the next tanker on the next drop, and I'd completely forgotten about those wires. I'd been there all afternoon, working that canyon, working around those wires. The smoke obscured them briefly. Distracted talking to the tanker, forgot about those wires. That altitude alert went off, and that snapped my situational awareness back to the fact that those wires were down there and I needed to stop my descent immediately. Regarding the tower itself and the NOTAM, notice to air missions regarding this tower, as we discussed in the previous video, there was a NOTAM out for this tower that says Houston Obstacle Tower Light Unserviceable. Well, which portion of the lights is it that's unserviceable? According to the radio tower owner, the NOTAM was issued due to the recent change in ownership, and there was no outages with the tower flashing beacons. Well, what type of tower was this? What was the requirement for beacons on this tower? Here's the FAA advisory circular that governs the use of obstacle lights on towers. And if we go all the way down here to page 66, we begin to see the different styles of lighting of these towers. Was this tower only required to be a FAA style A tower with the red flashing beacons? A3, here's an example of a 1,000-foot tower with 3 red flashing lights. FAA style B tower, which is made up of just the white high-intensity obstacle lights. Same with the FAA style C tower. But by far the better solution is the FAA style F tower that has both the red flashing beacons and a combination of the white high-intensity obstruction lights. Same thing with the style G tower, a combination of red and white obstacle lights. And I bring this up because this could have made a difference. Here's a video demonstrating what these white high-intensity obstacle strobe lights look like from the ground. You can see the combination of red lights and the white strobe lights on these towers over here, and just the pure white strobe lights on this tower over here. These white obstacle lights serve the same purpose as that altitude setting I did in the radio altimeter. They are a reminder to the pilot that yes, that tower is out there. You cannot miss seeing the tower with the white obstacle lights flashing in your face, as opposed to the red lights that are going to blend in with the city lights down below you. So was that NOTAM an indication that the white obstacle lights were out or not? Here's the FAR Part 91 General Aviation carve-out that they're operating these tour flights under. This basically requires a letter of authorization from your local FAA FSDO office. A drug program for the pilots needs to be submitted, and your flights are done within a 25 statute mile radius of the airport. You got to take off and land from the same airport. You also need to comply with the safety provisions of FAR Part 136, Subpart A of this chapter. And this is the part that details the letter of authorization, the use of proper passenger briefings, life preservers if required, and a performance plan. So it's obvious to me that this young pilot did not see the tower until it was much too late. She momentarily lost her situational awareness of where she was at in relationship to a tower that she knew was there the whole time. Whether the high-intensity white obstacle lights would have made a difference or not, hard to tell, but there are plenty of lawyers standing by that's going to drag this case out through court for years to come. Because the helicopter tour industry has a long history of accidents, the NTSB has been after the FAA for many years about the regulation of these type of operations, and for the local FSDO office to approve a tour operation over downtown Houston at that low of an altitude at night with those towers is just a recipe for a disaster waiting to happen. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.